Before you record or adapt the story for YouTube, here's a polished, emotionally engaging rewrite designed for high audience retention while staying friendly to YouTube monetization guidelines. The living room was full of noise. Laughter echoed against the walls. Balloons floated near the ceiling. A store-bought cake sat in the center of the table, its frosting already beginning to melt under the warm lights. To anyone passing by the windows, it looked like a perfect family birthday party. But I knew better. My daughter sat quietly in the middle of the room, wearing the same lavender dress she had carefully folded beside her bed the night before. She had just turned 11. Despite everything life had already taken from her, she still believed birthdays carried magic. And for one painful moment, I let myself believe it too. A shiny gold box sat in front of her with her name written across the top. Everyone watched as she smiled softly and untied the ribbon with careful little fingers. She lifted the lid. The box was empty. Silence swallowed the room. My daughter blinked once, then twice, peering inside as if something might magically appear. But there was nothing there. No toy, no card, no gift. Just emptiness. Then came the laughter. My father leaned back in his chair, swirling the whiskey in his glass like he was enjoying a private joke. "Kids like her shouldn't expect much," he said casually. A few people chuckled awkwardly. Others looked down at their plates, pretending not to hear. Then my sister added her own comment with a smirk. "Just like her mother." The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because they weren't new. Maybe because my daughter had heard versions of them her entire life. I felt frozen in place. After my husband died years earlier, I had no choice but to move back into my father's house. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a grieving heart, and a 6-year-old girl who deserved far better than what we were given. But inside that house, kindness came with conditions. My sister was treated like royalty. Her children received expensive gifts, endless praise, and attention at every turn. Meanwhile, my daughter and I lived quietly in the attic beneath a leaking roof. I cooked, cleaned, ran errands, stayed invisible, and my daughter watched everything. She watched her grandfather ignore her school awards. She watched my sister mock our worn-out clothes. She watched me swallow humiliation day after day because I was terrified of losing the only roof we had left. But what nobody realized was this: my daughter wasn't weak. She was listening, learning, remembering. Back in the living room, she gently closed the empty gift box and placed it beside her chair. I expected tears. Instead, she stood up calmly. The room slowly quieted as she walked across the floor toward my father. Then, in the softest voice imaginable, she said something none of us expected. "It's okay, Grandpa. I brought you a gift, too." Everyone stared. From the pocket of her dress, she pulled out a small white envelope tied with a red ribbon. My father laughed under his breath as he took it. "What is this?" he asked mockingly. "A drawing?" But the moment he opened it, his expression changed completely. The color drained from his face. His hand began to tremble. The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't embarrassment hanging in the air. It was shock. Inside the envelope were several folded documents and a handwritten letter. My father unfolded the first page slowly. His eyes darted across the paper, widening with every line. "What is this?" he whispered. A family friend who happened to be a lawyer leaned closer to glance at the papers. Within seconds, his expression shifted too. "These are legal documents," he said carefully. Everyone in the room leaned forward. Then my daughter spoke. A few years earlier, while cleaning in the attic, she had discovered old property records hidden inside a wooden box. At first, she didn't understand what they meant, but over time, she realized something important. The land my father constantly bragged about, the property he treated like his legacy, had never officially been registered under his real name. Years ago, he had used a different legal identity during a complicated business arrangement. He thought nobody would ever notice. But my daughter did. And through a series of overlooked details, that forgotten identity had eventually become tied to a legal beneficiary account connected to her own initials. At first, she simply asked questions at school. One teacher listened. That teacher introduced her to a nonprofit legal advisor who helped children and families understand complicated paperwork. Slowly, carefully, my daughter learned the truth. And now the truth sat trembling in my father's hands. The property no longer belonged to him. Legally, it belonged to her. My sister nearly dropped her drink. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "She's just a child." But the lawyer quietly shook his head. "The documents appear valid." My father looked stunned. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in the eyes of the man who had controlled everyone around him. But what happened next mattered more than the documents themselves. Because my daughter didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She didn't try to humiliate him the way he had humiliated her. Instead, she stepped closer and spoke gently. "Grandpa," she said, "I'm not taking your home away. I just want us to treat each other better." The room went completely still. Even now, years later, I still remember that moment more clearly than anything else. Not because of the legal papers, not because of the shock on everyone's faces, but because an 11-year-old child showed more grace than every adult in that room combined. That night changed everything. Within months, my daughter and I moved into a small home of our own. It wasn't luxurious. The furniture didn't match. The kitchen was tiny, but for the first time in years, it felt peaceful. I found work again. My daughter flourished in school. The shy little girl who once sat quietly at the edge of every room slowly began to shine. She joined debate club, won academic awards, started speaking confidently in front of crowds. And little by little, the pain she carried stopped defining her. As for my father, age softened him in ways pride never could. He began calling more often, not to demand, not to criticize, just to talk. The first real apology came months later, quiet, awkward, incomplete, but sincere. And surprisingly, my daughter accepted it faster than I did, because children understand something adults often forget. Healing matters more than revenge. A year later, I sat in an auditorium watching my daughter walk across a stage to receive a leadership award at school. The audience applauded as she adjusted the microphone nervously. Then she smiled. "My mom taught me that difficult people can make you feel small," she said. "But kindness, patience, and education can help you rebuild your life." I felt tears burn my eyes instantly. Then she added one final line I will never forget. "People tried to make us believe we were worthless, but we learned our value doesn't come from other people's opinions." The room erupted in applause, and for the first time in my life, I realized something important too. We hadn't won because we gained property or proved someone wrong. We won because we stopped believing the cruel things people said about us. That was the real gift. And unlike an empty box, no one could ever take it away.